Dr. Derek Salisbury. Oh, there you are. Sorry. I thought
It's okay.
That's all right. Dr. Salisbury, I know you're an assistant professor at the U.
Yep.
And we wanted you today to talk a little bit about aerobics of the brain. Is that right?
Yeah, so aerobic exercise for the prevention, hopefully someday, and the management of dementia. So I have, yeah, care if I swap seats?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is like an hour long of me learning. You ever been to an event where a politician doesn't speak the whole time? Me either.
Okay, so a little bit of background, as Angie was saying, I'm an assistant professor, I'm a clinical exercise physiologist within the School of Nursing. Dr. Fong Yu, I like to call her the brains of our operation. I kind of write all the exercises, kind of Daryl can tell you, he's been one of our research participants in one of our studies. So I often call him 001 because he was actually the first participant.
Wow.
Okay, so looking at kind of our vision within the School of Nursing, particularly in the roles of everything related to dementia or Alzheimer's disease, we know that cognition and functionality decreases as a consequence of Alzheimer's disease and progressively gets worse and worse and worse. We don't have a cure for the disease. Treatments are designed for the management of symptoms as we currently know. What we'd like to see is there a way that through our exercise programs currently that we can slow the rate of cognitive loss and functional decline as this disease progresses in an attempt to maximize quality of life? Because I think that's what it's going to come down to. How can we maximize quality of life with aging? Now, why exercise for Alzheimer's disease? I think that's a really big, important question to address. Well, if you look at the triad of symptoms in Alzheimer's disease, we have impaired cognition, we have loss of ability to maintain the ability for activities of daily living, and we also have the behavior and psychological signs of dementia, and there's quite a few of them. Not one case of Alzheimer's is going to be the same. They can be completely different. If you look at exercise training, aerobic exercise training can improve cognition. It improves your ability to perform activities of daily living, and it can help improve your BPSDs. It also improves your physical function. Now, one day we're also looking at, if we're looking at Alzheimer's disease, is there a way to potentially cure it? Okay, that's kind of like the gold mission. Now, the pathophysiology of Alzheimer's disease, we're familiar with the tau proteins and the tangles and the amyloid plaques, and there's also vascular components to this as well. There's a big publication that came out in Lancet in the past year saying that 33% of cases of Alzheimer's disease could be contributed or caused by vascular changes. So if you look at exercise, okay, management of cardiovascular disease risk factors, I always often tell our participants, it's a blood pressure medication, it's a cholesterol medication, it's a blood glucose medication, kind of rolled into one magic pill, you just have to do it. Okay, so there are ways that exercise potentially can combat the pathological changes that you would see in Alzheimer's disease and as well as other dementias. Now, what are we doing currently? If you look at the stages or trajectory related to Alzheimer's disease, you have preclinical Alzheimer's disease. Some people call this a subjective cognitive decline, meaning that these individuals test normal on a psychiatric battery of tests, but they feel like their memory is slipping. Okay, they may have pathological changes in the brain, but they test normally if we're testing memory or other indicators of cognition. Then eventually some of these individuals will test positive on these tests, and we call that mild cognitive impairment, and then it can progress even further to Alzheimer's disease, where not only are you having cognitive impairment in 2 specific domains, but you lose your ability to perform those activities of daily living, and that's where you really start to see quality of life changing and families really become impacted at this point. We have 3 studies that are ongoing. We have the Affinity D trial that's looking at aerobic exercise interventions in persons with Alzheimer's disease. We have the ACT trial, who Daryl can tell you a little bit more about. This is exercise interventions in mild cognitive impairments. And then we have the ExerGame study, where it's looking at aerobic exercise intervention in people who have subjective cognitive complaints, feeling like their memory's slipping, but we really don't know what the pathology is going on right now. Now, what's the early evidence? And this is kind of the big important point. There's a major meta-analysis came out in the Journal of the American Gerontological Society, and they looked at randomized controlled trials of exercise interventions in persons at risk or with Alzheimer's disease. Does exercise work to help improve or slow down cognitive loss in this patient population? And what they show that individuals who are at a high risk of or have Alzheimer's disease with aerobic exercise possibly having the most favorable effects. Okay, so exercise training can help improve cognition in these individuals who are at risk or have Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so this is a very important study in I want to say exercise world. Now, what do our participants think? Okay, now this is what's really, for me, it's really cool to see. And these are testimonials from our participants in our exercise interventions for Alzheimer's disease, and you can kind of read through them, but the one that stands out to me is the last one. I wish every person with Alzheimer's could have something like this. It is too bad it is coming to an end. Okay, these individuals not only were thinking, okay, I have a potential to improve my physical function, my ability to maintain functional independence, changes in cognition, but the quality of life aspect that they receive as I would say, an additional benefit of aerobic exercise training. Now, how do we get this out there to, real world, I call it? And that is a big challenge. I do exercise research also in people with peripheral artery disease, and it took forever to get our interventions out into real world in cardiac rehabilitation or have our programs backed by CMS. It was a big challenge. Okay, so we're starting to see, aerobic exercise training may be beneficial. Okay, there's a lot of support that it's beneficial to individuals with Alzheimer's disease. These are quote-unquote laboratory-based studies though. Okay, how do we get this into the community? And there are barriers for this. Okay, now if you look at our participants and caregivers, these are the barriers that they say that prevent them from doing this on their own. They might be scared, okay, to do this. They do not know how to exercise appropriately. Lack of trained exercise providers. And that was the big one for us, okay? Environmental, there are some environmental barriers, okay? So lack of resources, lack of trained exercise providers, yeah, absolutely. Lack of potential training sites, traveling to sessions can be a big barrier, and this is even more in rural disparities, particularly related to Alzheimer's disease. Particularly if you look at population dynamics. Okay, if you look at the urban settings, you have younger people moving into urban settings and older people moving into rural settings, and that's going to create a pretty big dynamic, and that's going to be a big problem. Solutions: train exercise providers on Alzheimer's specific exercise rehabilitation and find funding for our studies. And now it sounds like the NIH is ramping up a little bit more, and that's awesome to hear. So what have we done? We've attempted to move this into the community. Okay, we piloted a program called the Affinity D certificate program, where we brought in exercise providers, physical therapists, nurses, personal trainers, occupational therapists. We brought them onto campus. They took a 8-hour online course on how to specifically perform, design aerobic exercise program tailored to Alzheimer's disease and any of the triad of symptoms. 8 hours online course, and then 8 hours online, and here we go. And it was actually it was reviewed very favorably by external reviewers and the individuals who piloted this. We revamped it. Okay, so a beta version is coming now, and it's looking at from feedback from our exercise providers and external reviewers. It's okay, can you give us more detail? Can you give us individualized programs and instructional packets to provide to our exercise providers or community centers, anybody who can help train individuals with not only Alzheimer's disease, but dementias as well. And lastly, in the works, travel is a barrier. Okay, is there a way that we not only can train our exercise providers on this, but is there a way to actually deliver it to centers? So we're kind of thinking they have portable MRI machines. I look at a food truck downtown and I'm like, I could put a little exercise facility in there. Can we circulate this to people that need it? So kind of gives us a little background on the evidence and what we're doing and how can we make this therapy, you know, more available to the persons that need it. That's the most important thing.
Dr. Salisbury, have you designed a clinical design for a randomized controlled trial to move forward with at this point?
For getting it into the community based, or
yeah, you mentioned on your first slide,
yep.
the next step
yeah.
is you need more data.
Yep, exactly. So we have one in. It's a pragmatic trial, mm-hmm. so it's a little bit different study design, but it's looking at supervised, okay, so like we do right now where we have research assistants delivering an exercise intervention in the community, and then we have a second group that I am training the providers and how they implement it, and then we have a control group as well. So it's been submitted. I don't know what's going to come of that or how it's going to be scored.
Right.
And then the mobile exercise clinic, that's being written up right now.
Okay. And you're applying for funding where?
NIA, so National Institutes on Aging mm-hmm. is the big one right now, and we are also trying to find a platform to launch our beta version of the FIT-AD certificate program, so we can actually get providers in the Twin Cities and rural areas access to these resources and train them in on how to write safe and effective exercise programs for individuals at risk or have Alzheimer's disease.
That's great. Yeah. Well, can I ask your research participant there?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. To maybe, Daryl, can you talk a little bit about being in the program? And before you do that, I just want to mention to everyone as well, Daryl is a Vietnam veteran, and so my couple of my uncles served.
It's an 18-month program when you're in it, and the first 6 months were exercise, and as Derek mentioned, I was the #1 person selected for the study for the ACT program. So I thought that was kind of cool. And I had a lot of people kind of watching me and taking care, because there was only one of me for a long time on the program. I had Dr. Fang Yu, I had Derek, and I had 2 research assistants helping me. So I got a lot of really good care when I was doing this. The thing that I think is, you also go through a lot of testing. I mean, I did stress tests, I've had cognitive training, or cognitive testing, I get blood tests, MRI, so multiples of them. One of the things that fortunately happened was that in my last stress test, they found an anomaly when I was up at the upper level of my exercise. So then I had to go to my cardiologist, which I didn't have one, you know, to find out what was going on. And as it turned out, it was just an anomaly. It's not anything. They actually did an electrocardiogram to make sure there was nothing, before I could actually go back into the program again. So you get really a lot of really, really good care. Kind of what I saw from it is that I just had a lot more energy from after exercising. I think my memory improved. I think just my outlook just improved. One of the things that Mary and I have done is we've really looked for having a purpose in our, I don't want to say it's declining years. We liken to ourselves as we're recycled teenagers. But purpose, I think when I was diagnosed, having a purpose has been really, really very, very important to me. I think being this actively involved in all of this stuff that I've been, preparing talks, giving talks, doing all of that, I think is really helped me deal with the disease. I'm in the Giving Voice chorus. I sing once a week for a couple hours, which has really been really great, and that also gives me some social outlet. I'd have to say one of the main things that Mary and I have talked about is, although this is a terrible, terrible disease and you wouldn't want to wish it on anybody, the fact of the matter is we have made just some fabulous new friends from this journey that we've been on. And I wouldn't want to give that up for anything, even though I would prefer not to have it, but given that I do, we're all going to die someday from something, who knows what it's going to be, as an old boss of mine always said, you're not going to get out of this life alive. We're just trying to live it the best we can, but I really thoroughly enjoyed the staff over at the University of Minnesota, and still do, and I've still got some more stuff to do over there, but I really felt bad when the exercise was really over with.
Mary, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'll piggyback on this act that Daryl was in. I could see a difference in the exercise program, and I could see a difference in exercise all the way along. We went through the HABIT program, which is the healthy attitude to benefit independent thinking, actions to benefit independent thinking, through the Mayo Clinic at Rochester, Minnesota. And one of the things that they stressed a lot there was healthy eating, sleep, exercise, etc. Daryl was never a great exercise person.
That's a couch potato, what can I say?
And he would laugh at me when I would go out bicycling or whatever, but when he attended this HABIT program, and when they stressed exercise, and biking was one of them, he really got onto it. When Daryl was first diagnosed, he was extremely depressed. We actually didn't know if we should be thinking about memory care units. And the people that knew him at that period of time, Daryl's very atypical. He used to make breakfasts. I'll give you an example. He used to make breakfasts, and one day he poured the grease, hot grease, on top of the counter. Literally, my counter, the cabinets, and everything was full of grease. And I asked him what he was doing, and he says, "This is what we always do." He just couldn't connect that, no, we don't pour the grease directly onto the hot coals. His memory was quite bad. He was diagnosed at the Veterans Administration, and then he went on donepezil, Aricept. And they say most of the time you will see an improvement probably within the first 6 months. We didn't see much of an improvement with Daryl within the first 6 months. It was after the 6 months that we started to see an improvement. Whether it was because him becoming more socially involved, him being more active physically, or just going through finishing the other end of his depression, we don't know. But it's remarkable where he is at today. It's unbelievable in my estimation, and he still forgets. And there is the repetition that I have to repeat several times, but he's very highly functional. And I would not have said that in 2015.
Just to be clear though, I maybe didn't exercise like she did, but I still did my wilderness canoe trips. So I mean, you know, maybe I didn't exercise the way she did, but I was pretty active. I mean,
As long as he's still arguing with you.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you for that.